Namaste. One fine morning in the summer of 2020, when I was just recovering from my back injury, I closed the doors of my room and stood in front of the mirror. I had been a Bharatanatyam dancer for 20 years already, but there I was after the injury, starting all over again. I tried dancing the very first step that I learnt on the first day of my dance class, but now I was filled with a sense of fear, but I was also smiling because I was dancing after 6 whole months. I slowly struck my right foot on the floor and then the left, right and left, as my feet struck the floor alternatively to the beats of tei, ya, tei, tei, ya, tei. My heart was beating at a speed twice my feet. There were drops of sweat on my forehead, and my face blushed with joyous anxiety. All of a sudden, everything had changed. My body felt different. My approach to dance, my relationship with dance, and the very purpose of why I was dancing felt different all of a sudden. And that was when I began to consciously become aware of the multiple changes that happen in my dance and in my life, in the life of my dance and in the dance of my life. They say that a dancer is like a ship. They say that a dancer is like a patra or a vessel because we hold the several characters in us and the several emotions, and we sail ourselves through a performance. And quite interestingly, a ship is also called a vessel. We know that during its voyage, the ship goes through several changes for it to reach its destination. But that doesn't change the purpose of the ship. I believe that when the intent of the ship is clear and focused, even if its planks are replaced, the replaced planks begin to resonate and vibrate with that same intent. Change, I believe, is not a deviation in our journey, but rather a refinement which takes us closer to our destination. Change is not a deviation, but rather a necessary refinement. In the field of arts, no two artists can be the same. And even for one artist, their perception of art keeps changing with time and age. At the age of 9, I was filled with enthusiasm. When I danced at the age of 12, I was full of competitiveness. At 15, I danced to impress. And at 18, I think I truly began to express. And my identity as a dancer and my identity as a person was so closely interlinked right from my childhood days. I remember how I was always identified as a dancer in my school by my friends and my teachers, sometimes as that dancer who they would see in all the performances, or sometimes as that dancer who they would never see in class because she was always in rehearsals, or sometimes as that dancer who would casually doze off in class because she was too tired after her rehearsals. But as my perception of dance and my approach to the art kept evolving and changing with time and age, so did my habits, my beliefs, and inclinations in life change simultaneously. But I don't think I saw them as deviations or distractions in my journey, but rather it felt like a slow unraveling of the several layers of petals in a beautiful flower. Why I believe that a change is not a distraction or a deviation or an impediment, but rather a necessary refinement is because, especially when we let the change happen over a period of time, they truly result in a transformation. I'm now reminded of a composition, a musical composition that is very dear to my heart. It is a song addressed to Lord Krishna, where the lyrics say, "O Krishna, why do you pretend as if you do not know my heart yet?" So the lyrics of the song have been the same, the music also remains unchanged, and the emotions that the song has is also pretty much the same. And I've been dancing this for over 14 years now. The way I perceive the lyrics, the way I respond to the music, and the way I express the emotions have definitely changed over these 14 years. I may do the same movements again and again, but the way I bend, the way I hold my fingers, and the way I strike my feet have undergone a transformation. In fact, I performed this piece very recently, earlier this year, and it felt new all over again because so much had changed within me and outside of me, making this old composition feel absolutely new. Change in this case was certainly not a deviation in my journey, but rather a remarkable refinement that I would cherish forever. As artists, as dancers, we not only have the privilege of savoring a prolonged change or a transformation, but rather we are also expected to be spontaneous and quick in adapting to changes and modifications. I remember how during my childhood days and early teens, our dance teacher would pose a challenge on us. If I had rehearsed for the role of Sita, just before the day of the program, she would ask me to try the role of Lakshmana. And there have been several instances when I had to replace a dancer while the performance was happening. So, facing these last minute modifications were truly a chance for me to embrace changes with a sense of hope and a sense of innocent excitement. And I think if I had not embraced those changes and if I had not faced those challenges readily at that time, I wouldn't have taken the next step forward in my journey. And have you ever wondered how it would be, how life would be if everything just remained constant? How nice it would be if we were allowed to be in our own comfort zones forever. And how I really wish my body felt exactly the same every time I danced. And how uncomplicated it would be if my perception of human emotions never changed. I could just happily dance my way as I danced when I was 9 years old. Why bother about embracing changes and evolving? Well, I am unfortunately fortunate that I do not belong to such a static world. Rather, I belong in the world of arts, in the realm of dance, where change is my constant and compulsory companion. In retrospect, I think whenever I was reluctant to change or whenever I refrained from changing, that is when I felt most stuck. About 7 years ago, when I was preparing for an important performance, I had to present a particular piece in which I had to portray a character that was completely different from who I was as a person. Therefore, I had my share of conflicts and apprehension in presenting that particular character with whom I could not resonate with at that particular moment. But when I decided to break free from my inhibitions and stubborn beliefs and just enjoy this new outlook, I think something magical happened. On the one hand, that particular piece became the audience's favorite that day in the program. And on the other hand, I think I had not only expanded my artistic horizon, but this experience, this embracing of this new outlook and variation made me more open, understanding, and empathetic as a human being. This variation in my journey was certainly not a deviation, but rather a refinement, which made me more empathetic as a human being and an artist. As artists, as dancers, as actors, we portray several characters on stage and we express various emotions. We dance to compositions in different languages and we present the perspectives of a plethora of poets. Sometimes I may express the shades of love. Sometimes I may evoke humor. Sometimes I may act surprised, shocked, and angry. And at times I may shed a drop of tear. Once I may have to become a devotee, And the next moment, I may have to pretend to be a lover. The very next moment, I may have to be a mother, and then all of a sudden change into a child. I may even be a demon on stage or pretend to be the divine goddess. I could make you believe that I am a grandmother too, for that is what I'm meant to do. But imagine how it would be if I got carried away by the various emotions and the various characters that I portray on stage. How chaotic would that be? I'm reminded of quite a funny incident that happened many, many years ago when I played the role of Lord Shiva in a program. And I was coming back from the performance on a bike. I was still in the costume, and this was one of those packed, busy evenings in Chennai. And I was just in the parallel street of Sri Kapalishwara Temple in Chennai, which is one of the most famous temples of Lord Shiva in Chennai. So, seeing me as the Lord himself, the people on the street began to fall at my feet and pay their salutations. Even though it felt like a moment to be laughed about, it was truly a moment of revelation when I thought about it later. It was a reminder for me to stay rooted in my core being, irrespective of the multiple characters and the multiple emotions that I portray. One major life lesson that I have derived from dance is to stay anchored in my core being and not get carried away by the various waves and tides of the performance. And an artist who can do this with absolute surrender is truly a successful artist, in my opinion. Aren't we all artists? Aren't we all navigating between emotions, characters, identities, and situations on a daily basis and dancing our way through life? If life is meant to be a dance, and we are all dancers, and change is an integral part of that dancing journey, why not embrace change and let it mold us? I'm now reminded of a story that has had a deep impact on me. There was once a watchmaker who had a clock installed in front of his shop. That clock had been there for several years, and whenever a part failed, he would replace it very carefully, the spring, the gears, and the hands. One afternoon, a customer who came to the shop asked him, "Is it the same clock that I saw several years back?" The watchmaker looked at it and said, "I don't know, but it has kept the promise that it was here for." And that evening, the watchmaker realized that the clock had not survived because its parts had stayed. It survived because its purpose was honored. And from then on, whenever something in his life broke, whether it was a habit, a routine, a belief, or a relationship, he did not cling on to holding it unchanged, but rather he asked himself if it truly served the purpose that he was here for. And if it didn't, he consciously, gracefully, and carefully replaced it without a fear of losing himself in the process. We all know that a ship undergoes a lot of changes. Its planks are replaced while it is on its journey. But this does not change the purpose of the ship, and these changes are not meant to distract the ship, but rather to redirect and refine it unto the shore. I see many ships here in this hall today, each one on its own voyage in the sea of life. With every passing year, month, week, day, and moment, our planks are being replaced, whether we realize it or not. Are we conscious of the multiple changes that are happening to us this very moment? I am not the same person who began this talk. And I ask you, my friends, are you the same person who began listening? I am not the same person who began this talk. And I ask you, my friends, are you the same person who began listening? Thank you.